Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So today we're going to be taking a look at some of the best starting units for new players. I've done a video a few times, and actually, in reality, many of the meta units that I've talked about in the previous videos are still some of the top units that you're going to be wanting to unlock or work towards unlocking as a new player. But since it's a question that gets asked about quite a lot, and people start to doubt it because the other video is a bit older now, I thought it was worth revisiting now that we've just started Season 8. Before we really get into it though, there's 2 points I want to make. One, some of the units I'm going to pick may seem like top tier units, either heroic or golden era units, and you think, God, how the hell am I ever going to unlock that? That's not a new player unit. But there's 2 things I would like to point out. One, by doing your F4 quests like this, and getting to the end of the story quests, which is basically just an extended tutorial, you'll find that you're going to be getting a free heroic and a free golden era unit from a Signicolum box. That's a really good going, and you'll rapidly find yourself unlocking these units. On top of that, building up honor really is quite easy in this game. The actual amount of honor you have to do to complete a Tetra now is quite small. And yeah, you don't have to play that many battles to realistically be getting onto some of these heroic era units. So that's why I'm picking some of this higher tier stuff, and often it's just not really worth advising new players to start working for low tier, relatively crappy units. The only other thing I would like to point out is that a lot of the other stuff is going to be seasonal units. And these are obviously a pain to unlock because you do have to do the challenges and have to work through all the stuff to actually get them unlocked. But realistically, some of the better units are from the seasonal challenge units, and so it's kind of just a part of the game, unfortunately. Just to point out, you can always switch seasons. You can click here in the top, and you can go back to any of the previous seasons. I can do that, and I can start on some of these challenges here. You do not lose any progress on any of your other challenges. So for example, we're now on season 5. I've actually done all these, but I can easily switch back to season 8 and I've not lost any of the progress I've already made. But you can only work on one season's challenges at a time. Anyway, let's push on with the first unit. So we are going to kick things off with the Tetra unit, which I've pretty much started every single one of these videos with, and it's still the case. A unit that we actually did a video on relatively recently, the Pike Militia. This is realistically the only properly low tier unit that's going to be on this list, and there's good reason for it because it's such a versatile unit and a unit that is so effective even in the late game. There's a few reasons why it's so effective. One, basically you have to go down this middle veterancy line because you're going to be getting not only a double strike but bracing stuns units. When that's combined with the fact that this unit obviously has a brace and a very tight little column formation, it means you can actually apply quite a lot of damage relatively effectively. And for only 110 leadership, this is a great unit, this little fill-in. And it's one that I'm still using in top tier battles today, and you'll certainly use throughout your Conqueror's Blade career. So can't recommend these guys enough. In terms of doctrines, the only really important one is the increased damage while bracing. These guys are going to be putting bracing ticks in maybe a 300 or 400, something like that. So this extra 100 damage is a huge amount of increase. Absolutely the critical one to have. Beyond that, just a little bit of extra piercing damage, a little bit of extra damage to units, and some slight extra health to try and keep them alive, because they are quite a fragile unit. But yeah, one of the best Tetra units that you can be unlocking. And of course, it's probably worth sticking the extra little nodes in the piercing damage as well. For our second unit, we are going over to some of the seasonal challenges, and making our way all the way back down to Season 5, the Legacy of Fire season. And I'm going to group these 2 units together, since you're going to be unlocking them at relatively similar rates of time, I suppose. And that is the Stalwarts and the Paladins. Now these are called promoted units. So they are an upgraded form of the Spear Sergeants, in the case of the Stalwarts, and the Men-at-Arms in the form of the Paladins. But these 2 are absolute go-to units. The Spear Militia, the Spear Sergeants, used to be the absolute sort of meta starting unit. But as the game's evolved, they've struggled a little bit more, but their upgrade to Stalwarts makes a huge difference in what they can achieve, gives them a brace, makes them a much better unit. And so both of these units are key core units that are going to end up staying in your warband builds for almost your entire Conqueror's Blade career. So yeah, Stalwarts and Paladins are probably the two most important seasonal units that you're going to be unlocking, because they're just kind of the mainstays or the core units that you'll be using over and over in siege matches. In terms of what they actually play like, the Stalwarts are very much a shield unit, very much an extension of the Spear Sergeants. They are very, very tanky, have an insane amount of block. I'm missing a few of the doctrines on mine. I ended up going down the top line to try and get this increased bracing damage, particularly the double hit. And they obviously have some pretty nice formations. The only thing you may find slightly more difficult compared to the Spear Sergeants is the lack of a cover commander, which some people do kind of get used to and then finds it quite hard to deal with without. But it is definitely a better unit and it is worth learning the upgrade. And then Paladins, a unit that I use extremely regularly. I've equipped mine out with some pretty decent doctrines, including an Ironsides now. I'm on the bottom line for the sort of extra tankiness, really, and the extra damage. And I wasn't so convinced that the increased sort of self-heal was really worth it. But yeah, super interesting unit. Definitely two units that are well worth unlocking. In at number 3, we are back to the unit tree. And this is going to be one that's not going to be getting you those huge numbers of kills, not going to be sort of making you have those fantastic games, but is such a key utilitarian unit, and that is of course the Imperial Pike Guards. They are such a unique unit for their advance, and they're one of the true anti-cavalry units in the game, and that makes them such a core unit in my opinion for your loadout. If you have any intentions of ever joining a main house and getting involved in territory wars, then Imperial Pike Guards are going to be a core unit that you're going to be expected to have because of their advance. If we hop over to the barracks and try and find them, it's always difficult. Can anyone see where they're hidden? There they are. Then you'll see that they have a few key abilities. Well, they have one key ability, and that is advance, where they lower their pikes, just start walking forwards, and they basically knock down everything in their path. From cavalry to infantry, but most importantly, cavalry. And these are one of the few units that can stop large amounts of cavalry charging. They do struggle a little bit against shield units because they won't knock down enemy shields, so you do have to be a little bit careful in that sense. And because they don't have any shields of their own, even with the sort of tankiness that they have, then they can be a little bit vulnerable. People kind of flick between the two lines. I was having a little bit of a go on the bottom line for the reduced the increased defensive capabilities, but I think actually I probably might go back to the top line. I think the increased damage that you get along the top is in reality probably better for me, at least in my opinion. So yeah, absolutely a core unit that you should be unlocking. So for number 4, we are back to the seasonal challenges and kind of another newer unit that was only introduced last season, Berserkers. A really strange unit and one that can be extremely frustrating to play against, and if you have encountered these guys in rage mode coming against you, then you'll know why they're on this list, because they're such a tough unit to kill. They have an annoying amount of self-heal, they have a huge amount of damage, and yeah, in the right situation, and particularly if you get a few units of them running together, they can become almost unstoppable. They are only an 8-man unit, which makes them kind of pretty unique in that sense. I guess closest probably will be Iron Reapers, but they function completely differently. They're a fast-moving unit, which builds all around their rage. As they get into fighting and take damage, they build up rage, which enables them to unleash something like a frenzy mode, in which case they do insane amounts of damage. They also get quite a significant heal, and they basically just cut through everything in their path. They've become an absolutely essential unit in siege battles, and you just see them so regularly on the battlefield now that I didn't think they could not be on the list. They're a unit that is well worth unlocking. So for the final unit in the video, I had a few choices open to me, and I was kind of a little bit unsure about what I wanted to put in. Now, part of me wanted to not put a ranged unit in this video at all, because in the game at the moment, there does tend to be sometimes a little bit of a problem where people sometimes really enjoy taking just ranged units, but then that means they're not really pushing the points. They tend to sort of sit at the back with some of their range, and that generally is unhelpful for the team. And whilst a little bit of range and support, sort of quite aggressively pushing up, can of course be very helpful, it's often not necessarily played to the best advantage of the team. And so I didn't want this video just to have loads of ranged units in it. But of course, ultimately, this game is about enjoying yourself, and some people enjoy playing range. So if you did want to play a ranged unit, what is the best options available to you? Well, there were kind of a few choices, so I'm just going to rapidly, rapid fire, run through a few of perhaps the better options that are currently available in the game. Now, starting with the tech trees, these crossbows are the golden era best crossbow unit in the game. They are very effective. They do a lot of damage, particularly if you can get a double shot doctrine for them, which is quite hard to get hold of, but you can be done if you get lucky. So these are definitely a really viable option. If you're looking at tech tree archers, then the Imperial archers are probably the ones to go for. I would personally give the longbows a miss. Imperial archers have the damage, they have the armor penetration, they can kill units and heroes, and they fire relatively rapidly. If you can get an arrow rain doctrine for them, that also works really nicely. Definitely a very viable unit. And that leads us on to muskets. We've got the tercios, which are again the top tier musket unit. Very, very nice. They're very tanky. They have sort of 8,000 hit points. They can survive when things go wrong in a way that no other ranged unit can. But if you're just looking for raw damage, then it's the Imperial arquebusiers who have the highest damage output of any musket unit in the game. When they get into volley fire, not a lot stays alive in front of it. The only other things I wanted to point out was the Pavese crossbows can be unlocked here on the tech tree, or you can go over to the seasonal challenges and unlock them through missions back in Season 3 over here. And finally, perhaps one of the more popular archer units in the game from the seasonal challenges is actually you have to go all the way back down to Season 2, right to the very start, and then you'll see Namcan archers. And these are the units that have bleed damage. These are the ones that when you start getting shot by them, I'm sure you've probably been shot by some in a siege battle already, you'll find you get these bleed stacks and then your hero dies even though you've run around the corner. And that is these guys, the Namcan archers, one of probably the most commonly used archers in the game at the moment. So hopefully that gives you a few things to think about in terms of ranged units, if that is the route you want to go. But I would advise, remember, don't just take a full warband of ranged units, maybe just bring one and then focus on infantry as well, because that's how you really learn this game. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for lots more Conqueror's Blade content. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all on the next one.